I want you to picture a graph for a second.
Yeah.
You know, whenever a big, scary law like GDPR first comes out, you
Yeah.
expect to see this predictable curve.
Right, the standard regulatory life cycle.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A slow start, then this huge spike, while regulators flex their muscles, prove a point, and then it should trail off. You know, companies figure it out, the lawyers write the playbooks, and things settle down.
But that's not what's happened here.
Not at all. I'm looking at the data from the last 2 years, and that curve is just broken. We are not seeing a drop-off. We're looking at a plateau, and it is a very, very expensive plateau.
We're talking about 1.2 billion euros in fines.
Year after year.
And that creates a completely different psychological environment for any business. When you see 1.2 billion in 2024, and then you see the exact same massive figure for 2025, you realize, okay, this isn't a compliance spike.
This is the new baseline.
It's just the cost of entry now.
So we're sitting here, is January 2026, and we're looking back at 2 straight years of these billion-euro judgments. To make sense of all this, we've got 2 heavy-hitting reports from DLA Piper's Data, Privacy, and Cybersecurity Team 1 from last year, to give us some context, and their brand new January 2026 report to show us the damage.
And the mission for this deep dive isn't just to, gawk at all the zeros on the checks. We need to figure out why the strategy has shifted. We've moved from corporate headache to, boardroom crisis.
And personal liability, which we will definitely get to, because that part, honestly, it made me sweat a little reading it.
It should.
But let's start with the geography of this. When I look at the map of who's actually writing these massive tickets, it feels so lopsided. Germany's quiet, Spain is relatively quiet, and then you have Ireland.
Ah, the Ireland phenomenon.
Is that fair, though? I mean, has Ireland just decided to become the privacy police for the whole continent, or is there something else going on?
It's not really about attitude. It's all about architecture. Ireland has issued over 4 billion euros in fines since GDPR began.
4 billion.
4 billion. Compare that to France, which is in second place with about 1.1 billion. The gap is just enormous. But you have to remember the one-stop shop mechanism.
Okay, break that down for us. It sounds a bit like a convenience store.
Think of it like this. If you have a problem with a giant company that operates in 27 countries, you don't want to call 27 different branch managers.
Well,
right?
you want to call headquarters.
Exactly. You want to call the global HQ. And under GDPR, the regulator in the country where a company has its main European headquarters is the one that takes the lead on any investigation.
And since pretty much every major tech giant Meta, TikTok, Google, has their EU headquarters in Dublin for, let's be honest, tax reasons.
Precisely. The Irish Data Protection Commission, the DPC, they aren't just regulating little Irish businesses. They are effectively regulating the entire American tech sector's operations in Europe. That 4 billion euros isn't coming from local bakeries in Cork.
It's coming from Silicon Valley.
It is.
Okay, so Ireland is the bottleneck. But let's look at the reasons for these fines, because that's where the 2025 data gets really interesting. It's not just about data leaks anymore, is it?
No, and this is a critical distinction to make. The headline case from April 2025 was that you just don't. And we saw a similar thing with Uber, didn't we? The Dutch regulator hit them for 290 million for transfers to the US.
Right.
So the pattern for 2026 is crystal clear. If you are a multinational, your biggest risk isn't necessarily a hacker stealing a credit card number. It's your own internal data flows.
So if you're moving data across borders to the US, China, India, without bulletproof legal safeguards, you're just painting a target on your back.
A huge one.
So regulators are squeezing companies from the top,
Yeah.
about where the data goes, but that's really only half the story. While the legal teams are fighting regulators, the security teams are fighting, pretty much everyone else.
The breach statistics from the new 2026 report are, honestly, they're just depressing.
I saw that number and I genuinely thought it was a typo. 443 breach notifications per day.
It's not a typo. For a little while there, breach notifications had plateaued. We sort of thought we had a handle on it. But in 2025, they jumped 22%.
Why? I mean, why the sudden spike? Did we all just forget how to use firewalls?
It's the world we live in. The report points directly to high geopolitical tensions. So that means more state-sponsored attacks, more sophisticated ransomware gangs operating with, frankly, impunity. But there's another layer to this spike that affects almost every single company listening to this, not just the big, obvious targets.
The supply chain.
Precisely. We are seeing a major shift in who gets punished when a breach actually happens. Historically, under GDPR, the controller gets the fine.
Right, that's the company that owns the customer relationship. So if I buy shoes from you and your cloud provider gets hacked, you're the one who gets in trouble.
Correct.
Which, to be honest, always felt a bit unfair. If I hire a security firm and they're the ones who leave the door unlocked, why am I paying the ticket?
Well, the regulators are starting to agree with you. We've seen a landmark shift in the UK. The Information Commissioner's Office, the ICO, they went directly after a processor, an IT service provider.
This is the advanced computer software case.
Yes, they are a major IT provider for the NHS here. They suffered a ransomware attack that took down the NHS 111 service, the non-emergency medical line. It was chaos. Doctors couldn't access patient notes. Ambulances were delayed.
And the ICO didn't find the NHS, the controller. They find the IT vendor.
They find advanced computer software, 3.49 million euros. And they were very, very specific about why. It wasn't just, oh, you got hacked. It was negligence. They hadn't implemented multi-factor authentication on key accounts.
Right.
They had unpatched servers, just basic hygiene failure.
See, this is terrifying for anyone in the tech industry. If you're a SaaS provider, a cloud host, a payroll processor, that shield is just gone. You can be fined directly.
And we saw it again with Capita, another huge outsourcing giant. They were fined 16 million euros after a cyber attack exposed pension data.
This completely changes how you negotiate contracts.
Yeah.
If I'm a vendor, I can't just sign a waiver saying, not my problem. But also, if I'm the client, I'm thinking, how do I even know if my payroll provider is using multi-factor authentication?
You have to audit them, but let's be real, you can't audit everyone. You could have hundreds of vendors. It's impossible.
Which is exactly why resources like www.compliancehub.wiki are probably blowing up right now. When you have this supply chain panic, you need a central source of truth. You need to know what the specific compliance rules are, so you aren't just flying blind.
Exactly. You simply cannot manage third-party risk on a spreadsheet anymore. The volume is way too high, and the penalties, as we just saw with Capita, are far too severe.
Okay, speaking of severe penalties, we have to talk about the thing that I think is the biggest story of the year. We've talked about companies losing money. Now we need to talk about people potentially losing their freedom.
Personal liability.
This sounds insane to me. We are so used to the idea of the corporate veil protecting executives. If the company screws up, the company pays the fine. The CEO might lose their bonus. Maybe they get fired, but they don't get charged.
That era is ending. Regulators are frustrated. They look at a €1 billion fine, and they see companies just factoring it into the quarterly budget as a cost of doing business. So to actually change behavior, they're targeting the decision makers.
Walk us through the Clearview AI situation, because this feels like a really extreme case.
It is extreme, but it sets a precedent. So Clearview AI, as you know, scrapes billions of faces from the internet for its facial recognition database. They've been told repeatedly by European regulators to stop processing data of European citizens, and they've largely just ignored it.
So a Dutch regulator just got tired of asking nicely.
That's one way to put it. In 2024, the Dutch DPA started investigating whether the company's directors could be held personally liable for the violations. The logic is simple. If you are the boss and you know the company is breaking the law and you have the power to stop it, but you don't, well, that's a personal failure.
And then it escalated even further to criminal complaints.
Yes. In 2025, the privacy activist group NOYB filed an actual criminal complaint in Austria against Clearview's managers.
Wait, criminal? Like
Right.
with handcuffs and jail time?
Potentially. In Austria, the law does allow for custodial sentences for severe administrative offenses if they're persistent and they're willful. Now, will we see a CEO in an Austrian prison next week? Probably not. But the psychological barrier has been completely breached.
It changes the risk calculation entirely. It's one thing for a board to ask, can we afford the fine? It's another thing for a director to ask, can I afford a criminal record?
And that's exactly why the role of the CISO, the Chief Information Security Officer, has shifted from being a tech guy in the basement to being a boardroom bodyguard.
Which brings us right back to our other partner for this deep dive, www.cisomarketplace.services. It makes so much sense now. If you're a director or a C-suite exec, you are suddenly realizing that your own personal safety depends entirely on the competence of your security team.
Absolutely.
You can't just hire a buddy anymore. You need verified top-tier CISO services because the regulators are, well, they're headhunting.
It's risk management at the highest possible level. You need the documentation that proves you did everything right, because if the ship goes down, they are looking for a captain to blame.
Let's pivot to the consumer side for a minute.
All right.
We've got this weird split happening in Europe over how we pay for the internet. the consent or pay model.
This is the meta model, essentially. Pay us a monthly subscription or let us track you for ads.
And 2025 saw the courts really wrestling with this. But they didn't come to the same conclusion, did they?
No, and this is going to be a real headache for anyone running a digital business. In Austria, a court ruled against a newspaper, Der Standard.at, that was using this model. They said it was coercive.
Because if the price is too high, it's not a real choice. It's basically let us spy on you or get out.
Right. They argued that privacy is a fundamental right, not some luxury good you have to pay for. But then you look across the channel to the UK. The UK's ICO looked at the exact same model, specifically Meta's, and said, this is fine.
Why the difference?
It seems to come down to price and pragmatism. The subscription price for UK users was lower, about half the cost of the EU price. So the UK regulator decided that this offered a fair choice.
That feels like a massive philosophical split. In the UK, privacy is a commodity. If the price is right, it's a fair trade. But in Austria, it's a right that shouldn't even have a price tag.
And if you're a business operating in both regions, good luck. You basically have to build two different internets. One for the UK where you can monetize privacy, and one for the EU where you have to be much, much more careful.
Speaking of rights, let's talk about fear. This is another one of these legal concepts that seems to be expanding.
Yeah.
I always thought that to sue a company for a data breach, I had to prove I lost money. Someone stole my identity and bought a boat with my credit card.
That used to be the standard, yes, material damage. But the Court of Justice of the EU ruled in late 2025 that non-material damage also counts. And that includes negative feelings, fear, anxiety, even just annoyance.
So if I'm just stressed out because my data was in a leak, I can sue.
In theory, yes. But the courts are trying to put a lid on it a bit. In the Dillon case in Ireland, the Supreme Court basically said, yes, you can claim for distress, but don't expect a big payday. They use the phrase very, very modest compensation.
So no lottery tickets.
Yeah.
But then I look at the UK again, the Equiniti case. This one seems to lower the bar for just getting into court in the first place.
The Equiniti judgment is fascinating. The court said that the fear of an infringement is enough to bring a claim as long as it's objectively justified.
What does objectively justified mean in plain English?
It means you don't need to prove that a hacker actually used your data. You just need to prove that the company lost it. And it's reasonable for you to be scared that someone might use it.
That is a massive difference. Usually a company's defense is, look, we lost the hard drive, but there's no evidence anyone accessed it, so no harm, no foul.
And the UK court is now saying, no, the fear is the harm.
That sounds like a recipe for class action lawsuits. You don't need to find 10,000 people who had their identities stolen. You just need to find 10,000 people who are worried about it.
It definitely opens the door for mass claims. It shifts the burden of proof. You don't have to wait for the disaster to happen to seek damages anymore.
So let's zoom out. We've got consistent billion-euro fines. We have a 22% spike in data breaches. We have executives facing potential criminal complaints. And we have a legal system that lets people sue for just being afraid. It feels like the walls are closing in. What's the path forward for 2026? Is there any good news here?
Well, there is an attempt to fix some of the bureaucracy. It's something called the Digital Omnibus.
Sounds like a very boring transformer.
It's a proposal from the European Commission to try and stop the reporting madness. Think about it. Right now, if you're a bank and you get hacked, who do you even call? You have to report to the Data Protection Authority under GDPR. You have to report to the Cyber Agency under NIS2. You have to report to the financial regulator under DORA.
You're spending more time filling out forms than actually fixing the hack.
Exactly. The Digital Omnibus proposes a single portal, one report that goes to everyone.
That sounds great. So what's the catch?
The catch is that the regulators are drowning in reports. So in exchange for this single portal, they want to raise the threshold. They only want to hear about high-risk breaches.
So don't call us unless the building is actually on fire.
Pretty much. It's an attempt to prioritize, at least.
And what about the UK? You mentioned they were already diverging on consent or pay. Are they just going to keep drifting further away from Europe?
The vibe coming out of London post-Brexit is definitely growth first. The UK Chancellor has explicitly said that regulators have been focusing too much on risk and not enough on economic growth.
So lighter regulation is coming.
The philosophy is less is best. But, and this is a big warning for our listeners, don't mistake pro-growth for lawless. While they might be more flexible on business models, they're still hammering security failures. Remember that capita fine we talked about? 16 million euros. That was the UK. So they won't fine you for trying a new business model, but they will absolutely fine you for having a weak password.
So innovation is allowed, but incompetence is not.
That's a very good way to put it.
And finally, we can't ignore the AI elephant in the room. 2025 was meant to be the year of AI regulation. Where are we on that?
It's still a massive friction point. The big battle is over training data. Can you just use the public posts of millions of Europeans to train your large language model?
Meta tried to do this, right?
They did, and the Irish DPC stepped in and said, not so fast. Meta had to pause and adjust their plans. This core conflict has not been resolved. We're in a stalemate where tech companies say, we need this data to innovate, and regulators say, you can't just take it. 2026 is going to be the year they either have to find a compromise or AI development in Europe might just stall.
It really feels like we're at a tipping point on so many fronts.
We really are.
Before we wrap up, I just want to say thanks again to www.compliancehub.wiki and www.cisomarketplace.services. Honestly, after this conversation, looking at the sheer volume of compliance tracks and the personal risks for leadership, those resources feel less like sponsors and more like life rafts.
They certainly do.
So, to recap, the plateau of fines is real. 1.2 billion is the new normal. Breach counts are skyrocketing thanks to geopolitical chaos. If you are a processor in the supply chain, you are now in the line of fire. And if you're an executive, the corporate veil might not save you from a criminal record.
That sums it up pretty well. And if I could leave you with one final thought.
Please.
We've spent the last 8 years asking if companies can afford the cost of GDPR compliance. We look at the budget spreadsheets and ask, is this just too expensive?
Right. It's always a line item on a budget.
But with directors now facing potential criminal complaints in Austria and personal liability investigations in the Netherlands, the real question for 2026 isn't about the company's bank account anymore. It's, can the people running these companies afford not to comply?
That is a chilling thought. You might save the company some money, but cost yourself everything else.
Exactly.
On that cheery note, thank you for joining us for the deep dive. Good luck out there.